Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. So we're just on the couch, watching MasterChef, like usual. She'd taken her medication, so I knew she was probably going to go to bed soon. After the episode, she did her usual door checks to make sure everything was locked and stuff. She can't go to bed without making sure everything is shut/locked, i.e. windows, doors, all that. And then I followed her to the bedroom to lay with her for a little bit while she fell asleep. Not 15 seconds into laying there with her, we hear absolutely clear as day, this clacking sound coming from my kitchen. It was loud. I could hear it with my bedroom door closed. It honestly sounded like something with some real weight was walking around my kitchen. So I lock my bedroom door, she calls her friend, and we just hear this thing walking around my house. After 2 to 3 minutes, it just stops. I tentatively go out of the bedroom, look around my entire house. Empty. Door is locked. Every window shut. I have no clue what happened, but that was the strangest thing I have ever experienced in my life. Story 2. This happened a few months ago. In early January, my wife and I were in the kitchen, prepping lunch and chatting. Our 5-year-old daughter was in the living room, watching TV. No one else in the house. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and the layout of the house allows us to see a bit of the corridor and hallway outside the kitchen door. My wife was cutting up food, and I was sitting behind her. As we talked, she started to turn around to face me but stopped midway, staring at the kitchen door. She froze up completely, and I remember asking, "What is it?" She let out a loud gasp, and then I instinctively looked toward the door as well. I saw a brief glimpse of what seemed like a person turning the corner, towards the living room. It happened very fast, but I was sure I saw someone. I panicked. My immediate thought was, holy fuck, someone broke in, my daughter's alone in the living room. The only thing I thought of doing was grabbing a knife, and yelled at my wife to call the police. I rushed into the corridor and into the living room. In the living room, there was nothing. My kid was just sitting on the couch, watching Bluey. She looked at me and asked, "What's up?" with a confused expression. Mind you, I had a knife in my hand, and probably looked crazy. I tried to play it off and asked if she saw anyone come in the room. She hadn't and was clueless about what I was talking about. I searched the living room and the rest of the house. No sign of a break-in, windows closed, and we live on the 3rd floor. If someone had tried to escape that way, they would have fallen really bad. I checked everywhere, wardrobes, behind curtains, the front door. Nothing. No signs of entry, and the front door was totally closed, and we didn't hear anyone come in or anything of the sort. This all happened within maybe 10 minutes. I went back to the kitchen where my wife was crying. She had frozen up and didn't call the cops. I calmed her down. She got scared bad, and she couldn't even speak properly. When she calmed down, she explained to me what she saw. I personally only caught a very quick glimpse of the thing turning around the corner. However, my wife says she got a good look at it. She says she saw what looked like a tall woman, dressed in a floral dress and high heels, walking across the corridor. Neither of us heard any sound though. She said the woman stopped when she understood she was seen, looked at my wife in the eyes, and my wife swears the figure looked like our daughter, but older. This happened in the space of seconds, when she first froze up in shock. When my wife gasped, the woman hurried and turned the corner into the living room. I only saw this last part. If I hadn't caught a glimpse of it, I would ask my wife to go into therapy or something. But I know something was there. We never figured out what we saw, but it was definitely the strangest moment of my life, and I know it happened. Wanted to share here. Story 3. I know this story is going to sound weird and crazy, but hear me out. I'm not too familiar with this subreddit, but a friend of mine who's always talking about metaphysics, Twilight Zone, simulation type stuff loves this sub, and keeps telling me to post this. In fact, no doubt he'll read this. Hey Zane, lol. Anyways, here's my story. 2 weeks ago, I was about to get ready for a party at 6. Just before I started getting ready, one of my friends messaged me, super excited because a boy she's had a crush on for the last 4 years finally asked her out, and he was coming with her to the party. While I was texting her back, my younger brother walked into my room and asked if I could drive him to his friend's house, which I agreed to do. Then I went to the bathroom to have a shower and do my makeup. So I got in the shower, but when I went to wash my hair I realized that my conditioner was finished. I was pretty ticked off because I'd only bought it a couple of days beforehand, and it's an expensive brand. My younger sister always uses up my things, so I knew she'd used it all. She'd also trashed the bathroom, leaving water everywhere and her dirty towel on the floor. I was pissed off, and was about to get out of the shower in order to tell her off and get some more conditioner. But as I went to get out, I realized at the last second that she'd kicked the grippy mat we have at the bottom of our shower tub up. Our shower/tub is super slippery without the grip mat. So as I went to step out, my foot slipped, and I fell with my neck down onto the edge of my tub. Time seemed to slow down in my head, and I remember my last thought was, wow, this is how I die. How stupid. But here's the thing, at the moment of impact, I woke up in a start back in my bed. I know it sounds stupid and cheesy, like something from a dumb Netflix show, but there's literally no other way to describe what happened. I was lying in bed right before I got up to shower the first time, but I don't remember falling asleep. And the thing is, I've been a lucid dreamer for the last 5 or so years, and if this was a dream, it was way more vivid than anything I've ever experienced. What weirded me out, though, was that the exact same friend who texted me the first time messaged me after I woke up to tell me that the boy she had a crush on had asked another girl out, and she was pretty bummed about it and didn't want to come to the party. I was weirded out that there was some similarity between that and the dream, but didn't think much of it at first. As I went to reply, my younger brother came in to ask if I would take him to his friend's house. All the blood drained from my face. He just stood in the doorway looking confused, and asked me what was wrong. I rushed into the bathroom, feeling like I was losing my fucking mind, and went to check the conditioner bottle. I know this sounds completely crazy, but the bottle was finished just like before, and the grip mat was kicked up. At that point, I went to lie back down in bed, and texted my friends to tell them that I wouldn't be going to the party. Story 4. I was 17 years old at the time, still in that awkward in-between stage where you think you're grown, but you're really not. My dad and I had just wrapped up one of our regular fishing trips. It was late, almost midnight, and the air had that sharp mid-fall chill that sneaks into your bones once the sun disappears. The lake was quiet, the kind of quiet that only happens when everyone else has gone home hours ago. I remember the crunch of leaves under our boots as we made our way back to the car, the mist of our breath floating in the dark, and the faint smell of damp earth and lake water clinging to our clothes. When we got to the car, I reached for the passenger side door, ready to collapse into the seat after a long day. That's when my dad suddenly stopped me. His voice was calm but firm, almost strange. He told me he didn't want me sitting in the front seat for the ride home. I laughed at first, thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. I asked him why now, why tonight, why something so random. He didn't give me a reason that made sense. He just shook his head and said, "Just get in the back." That turned into an argument, like most things between teenagers and parents do. I pushed back, telling him it was ridiculous, that I wasn't a little kid. We went back and forth for 5 minutes, me rolling my eyes and him refusing to explain himself. The more he insisted, the more annoyed I got. Finally, I gave up. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way his voice carried something I couldn't place, something heavier than usual. I sighed and slid into the back seat, muttering under my breath the whole time. The night was pitch black as we pulled out onto the main road. No streetlights, just the headlights cutting through the dark. It felt eerie, like we were the only ones awake in the world. We had been driving maybe 2 minutes, not even far enough for me to settle into the seat, when it happened. I saw it at the same time he did, a pair of headlights dead ahead, coming straight toward us in our lane. Time seemed to slow down, stretching into this horrible silence. I remember the sickening certainty in my stomach. We were going to collide. At the very last moment, my dad swerved hard into the opposite lane, and unbelievably, the other driver swerved too, straight into us. The impact was violent, louder than anything I'd ever heard, metal screaming against metal. I remember my dad gripping the wheel, his knuckles white, his voice low and steady as he muttered, "I knew it." Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, flashing red and blue lights painted the trees around us. My ears were ringing, my vision blurry. Police officers were everywhere, voices overlapping in urgent tones. Someone pulled open the door and carefully helped me out. My legs felt like they weren't mine, and my body was heavy, as if gravity had doubled. I was barely conscious, fading in and out, and most of what happened next is still a blur. But one thing I remember with absolute clarity, as if it's burned into me forever, is seeing my dad. He was still sitting in the car, looking at me. His eyes were wet with tears, and he lifted a hand to wave at me. It wasn't frantic, it was gentle, almost like a goodbye. That image has never left me. Later, when I was stable enough to ask questions, I found out the truth. My dad hadn't been sitting in the car after all. The crash had thrown him through the windshield, and he had landed just a few feet from the vehicle. He had been alive for a short while after, but he passed away in the ambulance. The man driving the other car died instantly on impact. And in the back seat of his car was his own 17-year-old daughter. She survived, just like I did. Two families changed forever in a single moment. It's been 6 years since that night, and I still replay it in my mind more often than I'd like to admit. I think about that strange moment in the parking lot, my dad insisting I sit in the back seat. I'll never understand how he knew, or why he pushed so hard when he usually would have just let me be stubborn. I think about the wave, about the tears in his eyes. Sometimes I wonder if it was real, or if it was just my mind trying to make sense of something I can't. Story 5. This technically happened last night, but I was just starting a graveyard shift, and am only now getting it all down. I work at a gas station chain with only numbers in its name. We're just outside of a large chunk of suburbs. None if that middle of nowhere. Like we aren't exactly near any other businesses, but we are rarely completely dead for hours at a time. It was just past midnight, and with everything going on in the US right now, not a lot of things other than gas stations and bars are open at night anymore, so it was a slower evening. I was the only one in the store, and a car pulled up to one of the two double-sided pumps out front. Pretty standard white four-door. I'm not great with car brands, but it was a little nicer, like upper middle class, and probably only a few years old. A woman gets out and starts walking towards our door like she's in a daze. Legit, this woman looked like she saw a ghost. She wanders up, sort of freezes at the door for a second with a 1,000-yard stare before opening it and coming in. She didn't go looking for anything, didn't start shopping, just sort of stood inside for what felt like ages. Again, bars are still open, so I think maybe she's a little drunk or had a rough night or something. So I give the usual, "Welcome to gas station. Let me know if you need any help finding anything." And she finally notices me and immediately asks me the weirdest damn question I have ever been asked on the job. "You can see me, right?" "Yeah." "Like what else do you say?" She breaks down crying in the middle of my store, so I'm already headed around the corner to see what's up. I have my cell phone out in case I need to call the cops or something for her. I get her to sit down on a nearby pallet of soda, and I'm grabbing her a bottle of water, and after she catches her breath a little she tells me, "I thought I had died." Again, I'm thinking maybe she is on something, but she's a middle-aged woman who looks like a standard local suburban housewife. We're a pretty boring township without your average junkies like you'd find closer to the cities. So she asks if she can call her husband to pick her up and wait with me. She has her own phone and does so, not really telling him anything either, just where she is at and if he can come get her. He says he'll call an Uber and be there as soon as possible. We're waiting. So far nobody else has showed up, so I'm keeping most of my attention on her, and eventually she starts to explain to me. I was driving home from dinner with my co-workers, and as I'm driving through nearby intersection I recognized. A truck ran a red light and hit me. Now her car is still at the pump without a scratch on it. She goes on to say she remembers her car being pushed into a pole, going airborne, and then nothing. I tried to calm her down, letting her know that her car is out front and it looks fine, but she insisted that she completely blacked out, woke up in an ambulance for a split second, passed out again, and then woke up again in the driver's seat of her car, at the intersection waiting for the light to change, perfectly fine. This whole thing freaked her out so badly that she drove to the nearest anything, us, just so she could get out of the car. Husband eventually showed up to get her. He asked if I had any idea what happened, and even though she sort of explained to me, I just shrugged because no, I had no idea what was happening anymore. She reluctantly got into the passenger seat of the car, and he drove them back home. That was hours ago, after which I worked an entire shift at the station, trying to wrap my head around what the absolute hell I had just witnessed. Story 6. This is a topic that has questioned my sanity and haunted me for years and years. I've been seeing the same man since I was in my late teens. I'm 38 years old now. I started seeing him in random places around the age of 17. I live in a heavily populated area, and I have lived all over the tri-state area. I've seen him in parking lots, I've seen him in stores, I've seen him at events, but the craziest one was I saw him at a destination wedding in St. Martin about 10 years ago. I approached him at the wedding and asked him if he has been following me for years because I see him all over the place. As you can imagine, the conversation immediately became one of the awkwardest ones I've ever been a part of. He kind of laughed and shrugged it off, but I could tell he knew he was seeing me all over the place also. There's been spans of over a year to 2 years where I don't see him whatsoever, and it seems like it comes in waves. My life has changed considerably, as you can imagine, since the age of 17. I now have a wife and a child. My most recent sightings of the guy, was in a store called Bye Bye Baby. I was buying things for my newborn. Within the same month, I saw him in a Home Depot about 30 miles away. Every time this happens, he pretends like he doesn't see me, but I can tell he's as sketched out as I am. The last sighting of this guy was a couple months ago in the store for baby stuff, and that was the final straw. I'm telling you, if I see this guy again, I am going to get to the bottom of it. I don't even care what it takes. It's something I've pondered over for so long, and like I said, I question my own sanity. I'm also a male. For frame of reference, and the guy that I've been seeing is a lot older than me, but it seems like he hasn't aged a bit, as crazy as that sounds. Like I said, I know the man is real. I've talked to him face to face. But that still doesn't make me question my own sanity. Story 7. I've never used Reddit before, but a friend of mine was talking to me about the glitch in the Matrix subreddit, so I decided to share my story here, since I don't have any explanation for it almost 3 years later. Rewind back to September 2015. I was a freshman who had just entered high school 2 weeks prior. Already school was weighing down on me, and I'd been continuing a habit I had of going on walks to clear my mind. On this day, I'd been walking around a pond near my house. There's a trail that goes around the pond, and then the trail leads up to a set of abandoned train tracks on the other side, which sit about 15 feet above the path and pond below. After walking the circle, I was crossing the train tracks when I decided I wanted some ice cream. The fastest way to get to the ice cream shop was to take the path below the train tracks, but there isn't any way to cross the pond without going all the way back around, and being 14 years old, I decided that I could just jump from the tracks onto the path below and keep walking. Looking down from above, it didn't seem to be that far of a jump, so that's what I did. The next thing I remember after that was being half-conscious in an ambulance. Everything was extremely blurry, and the paramedics sounded slightly panicked. I wasn't able to move either of my legs, so I think they were both broken. This scene continued on for a few minutes, until we arrived at the hospital, and I was wheeled into the emergency room on a stretcher. I only had a few minutes in emergency before I eventually lost all consciousness, and that was the last thing I saw. After I'd been unconscious for what felt like about an hour, I opened my eyes and I was on the ground. I just hit the ground after jumping, but this time I was fully conscious. I hadn't noticed this before I jumped, but there had been a car parked watching me. I think they thought I was attempting suicide, but it probably looked that way, and the people in it had jumped out and called an ambulance for me. The ambulance ride had been the exact same as it was the first time, and I was put into the same emergency room that I had died in before. The only difference between the two events were that I was fully conscious this time, and my injuries were much more minor. I was discharged from the hospital the same night, with only stitches in my lip, a slightly fractured jaw, and a mild concussion. For a while after this, I assumed that the first scenario had just been a weirdly coincidental dream that I'd had while I was unconscious, so I didn't consider it anything abnormal. It wasn't until a few weeks after, when my mom told me that the people who had helped me said that I had been conscious the entire time. I hadn't been knocked out after hitting the ground or anything. So, that entire scenario managed to happen in the few seconds it took for me to hit the ground, while I was still conscious. Anyways, I'm not very good at describing things, especially with how blurry this day was now that it was years ago. But I'm 17 now, and I still have no way to explain what happened that day, other than I died, and was given a second chance. Story 8. I am sorry if this is the wrong place to post this. Mandela Effect doesn't allow personal stories, only stuff with proof. This is going to be long. This Wednesday, February 5th, on the way to work, I went to my usual gas station. I go there every day, 5 days a week. I go in and everything is different. All new drink stations have been installed, and the food area is completely redone. None of this was different Tuesday morning, and I couldn't believe that they'd redone a gas station in one night. I then go outside and see that 2 gas pumps are completely gone, and there is mulch bags stacked taking up all the space. None of this was there the day before. I then leave and head to work and somehow turn on the wrong street and get lost. I've been driving these neighborhoods for months, and suddenly I'm lost trying to find my job. I get to work a few minutes later, and I'm panicking. I know it's silly, but I've always feared changing timelines. My fiancé and I have a timeline-safe word, so we know we are together. I call and ask him, and he has no idea what I'm talking about. We just talked about it at the end of January, and we've had it established for a while. I've even woken him up at night and asked him after having a nightmare, and he's known. But now he has no idea what I'm talking about. Then the girls start coming downstairs. I work in an addictions group home, and one girl keeps saying how confused she is and how nothing makes sense today. Later in the day, another kept saying all she wanted to do was cry, and she had no idea why. Then while running errands, I go down the same street I always do, and suddenly there are 4 houses gone and a grove of trees planted. I've never seen them before and really started freaking. They are next to a building my family owned for the last 20 years. I know the whole neighborhood. My final straw was calling my mom today. She said my sister was going out tonight with her friend Jenna. I have known Jenna since 2003. I asked how much longer until Jenna has her baby. My mom goes silent and asks what the heck I'm talking about. She says she's never been pregnant. I look her up online, nothing. I asked my sister just a half hour ago, and she laughs in my face and says Jenna is infertile and will never have kids. I literally remember the day my sister told me she was pregnant. She told me to guess who, and Jenna was my third guess. What the hell is happening to my life? Update for you all. I really appreciate all the support and kind words people have had for me. This whole experience has been very scary for me. As for a few questions people have had, it's getting hard to keep up. I'm going to answer them here. I have already taken an extensive online schizophrenia test on Friday night. It said that I'm fine and very low probability of it. As for CO2 poisoning, I have no gas in my home or the home I work in. Everything is electric. I opened up to my fiancé and had him read this. He knew it had happened, but didn't know how upset I was. I asked him if I had shown any signs of mental instability or Alzheimer's. I'm only 25, and he said I've never shown any signs and only some mild anxiety when things get crazy. Lastly, the safe word and things leading up to the day. We created the safe word mostly as a joke after I read the Berenstain Bears theory, and I had a really weird day at my old job. It became more used when I'd have nightmares and when I made jokes. The day before was a normal Tuesday. Wake up, work, home, eat, sleep. The only strange thing about the day was that I thought I'd heard a scream or yell as I was falling asleep. I blew it off and still kind of blow it off as some sort of sleep paralysis or dreamy moment. Story 9. A few years ago, when my daughter was 3, I decided to go back to school and become a nurse. My husband and I were in no way trying for a baby whatsoever. I was on birth control, and we were very careful. I walk into her preschool one day to find the director and her teachers telling me congratulations with big smiles on their faces. I used to work as a preschool teacher here, so a lot of these people were close friends of mine. I asked them what they're congratulating me for, and they tell me that my daughter announced to everyone that Mommy has a little sister in her tummy. I laughed it off and told them all I was sorry to disappoint them, but that just wasn't true. My daughter and I went home and talked about it. I told her Mommy didn't have a baby in her tummy, and she just kept pointing at my belly and saying, "Yes, you do," as if I were lying to her. A few days later, I wake up to someone touching my belly. My daughter has the bottom of my shirt pulled up with her head resting on my belly while she rubs it gently and says, "Baby sister, what are you doing hiding in there?" It was really sweet, and I just assumed she really wanted a little sister. She had never expressed any interest in having a sibling prior to this, and we never discussed it. We had the talk again, and she got upset with me and told me she has seen her before, and she is in there. She told me that her sister looks different and than us and has blonde hair and blue eyes with little holes in her cheeks, aka dimples. My daughter, husband and I all have very dark hair, chocolate brown eyes, and no dimples. I talk to her about wanting a sibling and tell her that when I finish school, we will try to give her a little brother or sister. Again, she's frustrated and yelling, "I already have a sister." I was expecting my period to start within the next week like clockwork. It didn't. I took a pregnancy test and just stared at that faint positive result for what felt like forever. I was completely in shock. I was on birth control, so immediately called my OBGYN, and they saw me the next day. It was estimated that I was 4 weeks and 6 days pregnant. I gave birth to a blonde-hair, blue-eyed little girl with the sweetest dimples. This experience has always blown my mind. Story 10. I don't know if it is suitable for this sub, but still here it is. The year was 2011. I was in med school, while my brother joined engineering college in same city. My brother is 3 years younger to me. One day I asked him to come to my hostel, as it was his free day from college. He used to come in his free day as he missed family. We were chatting and having foods while he suddenly asked me about a girl. Convo. "Bro, do you remember Nisha, altered name for obvious reason?" "Me Nisha who?" "Bro, it seems like you have forgotten her. Good for you." Me, visibly confused. "Which Nisha you are talking about?" "Bro, still playing. Don't try so hard, brother. that you know exactly about whom I am taking about. Leave it if that's still hurting you, that I shouldn't have bring her up. Me, thinking that he is pulling my leg, I started to play along. Yeah, I remember that I forgot her, that it was bitter that I am not in touch with her. Bro, it is not like that you can be in touch with her anyway. Me trying to play along. Yet that she is probably married by now. Bro, visibly confused. Now what Nisha are you talking about? Me exactly the Nisha you are talking about. Bro, leave it then. Mia. After 30 or so minutes after lunch is over. Bro, do you really not remember her? Nisha? Me, tired of this game, agitated. Bro, stop this game, it's not funny anymore, that I am tired of this stupid game. Bro, what game? Me, I don't really know Nisha. Who is she? Bro, forget it. And he left for the day. I asked Mom after few days about Nisha. She was distraught when I asked about her. After few mon she told me that she was my GF while I was in school. She was my brother's best friend. She died in a car accident few years back. I was dumbfounded that I don't even recall her name, face, memory. Nothing. Her memory is totally wiped out from me. I was disturbed and went back to home where Mom showed me a pic where I was with a girl, and my brother, that I don't even remember the girl. In some cases of PTSD, selective amnesia happens. But that repressed memory can be triggered by related memory. But in this case, I didn't even recall her. I was agitated because I don't remember her. Till this day, I don't recall anything. According to family, we were close. I didn't try to ask her family or any other people because it seems insensitive. Story 11. We were all completely sober. Quick preface. I'm currently driving home from my lunch break, so I'm using Siri to talk. Hopefully this makes sense. So back in the summer, we had a huge friend trip to Lake Powell. For anyone that has been there, you know it's absolutely beautiful. Anyways, we were boating through the canyons and going deeper and deeper into the canyons. Lake Powell. At one point I thought in my mind something along the lines of, damn, this place is so beautiful it almost looks fake, or like it was designed to look this way by something. When I started saying that in my mind, a friend turned around to me and said, dude, it feels like we're in a movie and we are looking at movie props. It looks so fake. And I turned around and looked and then said, dude, what the fuck did you just say? I was thinking the exact same thing. We were both freaking out about it, but then it got a little freakier. We were sitting at the back of the boat looking at our 10 or so friends standing up while the boat was slowly going through the canyons, and as I watched them looking at the scenery, I experienced an altered state of conscience. The best way to describe it is the facade of the human experience was dropped, and all of a sudden my friends looked like gods or angelic beings experiencing Earth and just enjoying the moment. My friend turned to me and said, dude, look at our friends, they're so beautiful and alive, they look like angels. And I knew at that moment we were both experiencing the same thing. The best way to describe what we saw is it looked like we placed ourselves in a video game and were enjoying what we created. It's super hard to describe this experience. If you've seen Maze Runner, you know how they make you forget everything before you go into the maze, but yet you had an existence before? It felt like that. That nature of reality teased us and slightly withdrew, and we saw our friends and this earth for what it could truly be for a brief moment in time. Story 12. This all happened about 7 or 8 years ago, on a night that started like any other and ended up lodged in my memory like a splinter. My husband, Chris, and I were lying in bed watching television, the kind of low-key evening after the kids were asleep, the glow of the screen painting our ceiling in slow-moving images. The room smelled faintly of detergent and baby lotion. The window was cracked a little, and a cold whisper of autumn air threaded through the curtains. I was half listening to the show when, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a small figure standing in the doorway. At first I thought it was our son, Connor. He was the only child we had at the time, and he loved to sneak into rooms to try and scare us with huge, exaggerated faces. I nudged Chris with my elbow, quiet as a cat. Hey, SHHH, look. I think Connor's going to try to scare us. He turned his head slowly, squinting in the dim light, and watched as the child stepped into the room. That moment felt different from the start. It wasn't the familiar stealthy swagger of our kid trying to be funny. It was a kind of small, solemn entrance, like a tiny statue come to life. The child toddled forward with a peculiar rhythm, head slightly tilted back, curls bouncing with each step, little diapered legs making that soft squish-squish sound that only babies make when they move. He went all the way to the end of our bed, hesitated, and then his head dropped forward, almost as if he were looking down at something invisible on the floor. Chris and I watched in silence, riveted and a little breathless. There was no chortle, no boo. Nothing to break the hush. I felt the hair on my arms rise. Then, when we both moved to stand up and get a closer look, he was gone. Just like that, empty air where a small body had been. I looked at Chris, and our startled voices were a single thin thread. Did we just see a ghost? I blurted out before I could stop myself. The absurdity of the question hit me immediately, and almost as an afterthought, I added with a nervous laugh, "Well, if we have another baby someday and he has curls, I guess that means he visited before he was born." We both cracked up at the ridiculousness of that thought. We weren't even trying for another baby, but the laughter had an edge of something like wonder in it. Curiosity overrode fear. We crept down the hall to check on Connor. He was curled up in his bed, breath soft and regular, entirely asleep. Nothing in his room indicated he'd been wandering. We double-checked the house, the kitchen light, the back door, and everything was exactly where we'd left it. There was no plausible explanation except that we had both just seen a child who did not belong to us. A few months later, I found out I was pregnant. The surprise hit like a wave. We had not been trying, and yet there it was, a small, impossible new life growing inside me. When our son Liam was born and reached 2 years old, that offhand, half-joking thought from the night years before came roaring back into focus in a way I could never have anticipated. Liam had the same little tilt to his head when he walked, the same ringlets that bobbed when he moved. One night, he toddled into our bedroom in the dark, hair bouncing, and for a split second the world folded. The image was identical. Head tipped back, curls catching the weak light, the diaper making a soft, rhythmic squish with each step. I remember the exact sensation, like a bucket of cold water poured over my chest, as my mind slammed into the realization. This was the child who had stood in our doorway all those years ago. There was no doubt in my mind. It was the same mannerism, the same small gait that had seemed so odd when I'd seen it the first time. I felt a jolt of something that was part awe and part grief, because suddenly that strange, quiet visitation had meaning. If the thing we'd seen before Liam was born was some kind of visitor, a presence that could come and go between rooms and times, then it had come to see me again. From that point on, visits became a pattern. Whenever Liam stayed elsewhere, with my parents, grandparents, anyone, he would sometimes visit me in my sleep. Once, I woke from a nap to find a small, smiling face hovering at the edge of my dream. He stood there in a tiny red shirt, hair cut short, just smiling at me like he was proud of whatever secret mission had brought him to my room. I blinked and felt the warmth of him, the small weight of his presence, and then I drifted off again. The next day, when I went to pick him up from my mother's, everything lined up in a way that made my hair stand on end. He had a neat, freshly shorn haircut, and on his chest was that same little red shirt. I asked my mom, the words tumbling out of me, "Did he wear this yesterday?" She looked at me with a half grin and a shrug and said, "Oh yeah, he did, but he insisted on wearing it today too." I watched my son carefully. He looked at me, eyes wide and candid, and I asked him as casually as I could, "Did you go see Mama yesterday?" He cocked his head in that same way, and when he smiled up at me, something in the back of my chest unclenched. He might have just been a toddler doing toddler things, repeating words, wearing the same shirt twice, but the certainty pulsing through me was undeniable. I don't have a tidy explanation for what we saw that night. I don't know whether it was some sort of premonition, a guardian-like presence, or something else entirely. All I know is that the sightings were real to me, and they threaded through our lives like a quiet, inexplicable stitch. Whether it was spiritual, supernatural, or some strange coincidence that tied behavior and appearance together across years, it changed the way I noticed small things. The tilt of a head, the bounce of a curl, the comfort of a familiar presence in a room.